Well, shall I tell you a Christmas story then?
Yes, tell us.
Well, it's a bit of a ghost story, but a Christmas story nonetheless. A story of hope and redemption.
Tell us.
Well, all right. Marley was dead, to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Mind, I don't mean to say that I know of my own knowledge what there is particularly dead about a doornail. I might have been inclined myself to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade. But my unhallowed hands shall not disturb it. You will therefore permit me to say emphatically that Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead? Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Scrooge was his sole executor, his sole administrator, his sole friend, and sole mourner. Even Scrooge was not so dreadfully cut up by the sad event. No, there is no doubt that Marley was dead. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come from the tale I'm about to relate. Now, Scrooge never painted old Marley's name out. There it stood, years afterwards, above the warehouse door. Scrooge and Marley. The firm was known as Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business called it Scrooge, and sometimes Marley. But he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted one at the grindstone, Scrooge, hard and sharp as flint, from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his nose, stiffened his gait, made his thin lips blue. He carried his own temperature always about with him. He iced his office in the dog days and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas. Nobody ever stopped him in the street to say with gladsome looks, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" No beggars implored him to bestow a trifle. But even the blind man's dogs appeared to know him. And when they saw him coming on, would tug their owners into doorways and up courts. But what did Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked, to edge his way along the crowded paths of life, warning all human sympathy to keep its distance, was Scrooge. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house, a dismal little cell. Scrooge had a very small fire, but the clerk's fire was so much smaller that it looked like one coal. But he couldn't replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his own room.
Wherefore, the clerk put on his white comforter and tried to warm himself at the candle, in which effort, not being a man of strong imagination, he failed.
Merry Christmas, Uncle. God save you, cried a cheerful voice. It was Scrooge's nephew, who came upon him so suddenly that this was the first intimation he had of his approach.
Bah, said Scrooge. Humbug!
Christmas a humbug, Uncle, said Scrooge's nephew. You don't mean that, I am sure.
Oh, I do. What right have you to be merry? What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough.
Come then, returned the nephew gaily. What right do you have to be dismal? What right do you have to be morose? You're rich enough.
Scrooge, having no better answer off the top of his lips, replied, Bah! Again, followed it up with, Humbug!
Don't be cross, Uncle.
What else can I be when I live in a world of fools such as this. Merry Christmas. Out upon Merry Christmas. What's Christmas time to you? A time for paying bills with no money? Time for finding yourself a year older, but not an hour richer. A time for balancing your books. Merry Christmas. If I could work my wheel, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips to be boiled in his own pudding, buried with a stake of holly through his heart. He should.
Uncle!
Nephew, keep Christmas in your own way, and let me keep it in mine.
Keep it. But you don't keep it.
Let me leave it alone then. Much good as it will do you, much good as it has ever done you.
I've always thought of Christmas time as a good time. The only time I know of in the long calendar of the year where men and women seem to open up their shut-up hearts freely, and to think of people below them as if they really were fellow passengers to the grave, and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pockets, I believe it has done me good, will do me good, and I say God bless it.
The clerk involuntarily applauded. Becoming immediately sensible of his impropriety, he poked at the fire and extinguished the last fresh spark. Forever.
Let me hear another sound from you. You'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation. Oh, you're quite a powerful speaker, sir. Wonder you don't go into Parliament.
But don't be angry, Uncle. Come dine with us tomorrow.
I'll see you in hell first.
But why? Why?
Why did you get married?
Because I fell in love.
Because you fell in love, growled Scrooge, as if that were the only thing more ridiculous than a Merry Christmas. Good afternoon.
I want nothing of you. I ask nothing of you. Why cannot we be friends?
Good afternoon.
I'm sorry in all my heart to find you so resolute. We've never been in a quarrel to which I've been a party, but I have made the trip in homage to Christmas, and therefore a Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Good afternoon.
And a Happy New Year.
Good afternoon.
His nephew left the room without an angry word, notwithstanding.
He stopped at the outer door to bestow the greetings of the season upon the clerk.
Who, cold as he was warmer than Scrooge, but he returned it cordially.
There's another fellow, my clerk. 15 shillings a week. Your wife, children, talking about a Merry Christmas. I'll retire to Bedlam.
The clerk, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, they let a few other people in. They had books and papers in their hands and bowed to him.
Scrooge and Marley's, I believe. Have I the pleasure of talking to Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?
Mr. Marley died 7 years ago this very night.
We have no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner. At this festive season of the year, it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight adjustment for the poor and destitute, who suffer greatly at the present time.
Many are home to common needs. Common necessary, sir.
Oh, are there no prisons?
Plenty of prisons.
And the union workhouses, they are still in operation.
They are still.
I wish I could say they were not.
For a minute there, from what you had said, I thought something had occurred to stop them in their useful courses. I'm very glad to hear it.
A few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth.
We choose this time because it is a time of all others when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices.
What shall I put you down for?
Nothing.
You wish to be anonymous?
I wish to be left alone. Since you asked me what I wish, that is my answer. I do not make myself merry at Christmas. I cannot afford to make idle people merry. I support the establishments I mentioned. They cost enough. Those who are badly off must go there.
Many don't want to go there, and many would rather die.
Well, if they would rather die, I suggest they get on with it. decrease the surplus population. Besides, I don't know that.
But you might know it.
It's not my business! It's enough for a man to know his own business and not to interfere with others. Mine occupies me constantly. Good afternoon.
Seeing clearly that it would be useless to pursue their point, the gentle people withdrew. Scrooge returned to his labors with an improved opinion of himself, and in a more fastidious temper than was usual with him. Meanwhile, the fog and darkness thickened. Cold became intense. In the main street, a party of ragged boys were gathered, warming their hands and winking their eyes before the blaze and rapture. The owner of one scant young nose, gnawed and mumbled by the hungry cold, as bones are gnawed by dogs, stooped down at Scrooge's keyhole to regale him with a Christmas carol.
God rest ye merry gentlemen, may nothing you disturb.
Scrooge seized the ruler with such energy of action that the singer fled in terror, leaving the keyhole to the fog and even more congenial frost.
At length, the hour of shutting up the counting house arrived. The clerk instantly snuffed the candle out and put on his hat.
You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose.
If quite convenient, sir.
It is not convenient, and it's not fair. Why, if I was to stop £1/2 for it, you'd feel yourself ill-used, I'll be bound.
The clerk smiled faintly.
But yet, you don't feel me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work.
But it's only once a year, sir.
Oh, excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. I suppose if you must have the whole day, be here all the earlier next morning.
The clerk promised that he would.
Scrooge walked out, proud.
The office was closed in a twinkling, and the clerk, with the long ends of his white comforter dangling below his waist, for he boasted no great coat, ran home to Camden Town as hard as he could pelt to play at Blind Man's Club.
Scrooge took his usual melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and having read the newspapers, beguiled the rest of his evening with his banker's book, went home to bed.
He lived in chambers which had once belonged to his deceased partner. They were a gloomy suite of rooms.
They're old enough now, dreary enough. Nobody lived in them but Scrooge, all the others being let out his offices.
Now, in fact, there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door, except that it was very large.
It is also a fact that Scrooge had seen the knocker night and day during the whole of his residence there.
Let it also be borne in mind that Scrooge had not bestowed one thought on Marley since that last mention of his 7 years dead partner that afternoon. And then, let any man explain to me, if he can, how it happened that Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker, without its undergoing any intermediate process of change, not a knocker, but
Marley's face!
Marley's face. It had a dismal light about it,
Like
like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. It was not angry or ferocious, but looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles turned up on its ghostly forehead, and its livid color made it horrible.
As Scrooge looked fixedly at this phenomenon, it was a knocker again. He put his hand upon the key he had relinquished, turned it sturdily, walked in, lighted his candle.
He did pause before he shut the door.
And he did look behind it, cautiously at first, half expecting to see Marley's pigtail sticking out into the hall.
But there was nothing on the back of the door, but the screws and nuts that held the knocker on.
Bah! And closed it with a bang.
The sound resounded through the house like thunder.
Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by echoes. He walked across the hall and up the stairs, trimming his candle as he went.
Up Scrooge went, not carrying a button for that.
Darkness is cheap. Scrooge liked it. But before he shut his heavy door, he searched to see that all was all right. He had just enough recollection of the face to desire to do that. Living room, bedroom, lumber room, all as they should be. Nobody under the table, nobody under the sofa. A small fire in the grate, a little saucepan of gruel upon the hob. Nobody under the bed, nobody in the closet. Nobody in Scrooge's dressing gown, which was hanging in a suspicious attitude against the wall. Lumber room as usual.
Quite satisfied, he closed the door and locked himself in.
Double locked, which was not his custom.
Thus, being inside, securing against surprise, he put on his dressing gown. And he put on his slippers. He put on his nightcap, and then he sat down before the fire to take his gruel. And as he threw his head back in his chair, his glance happened to rest upon a bell that hung in the room.
It was with great astonishment and an inexplicable sense of dread that as he watched, the bell began to swing.
It swung so softly in the outset that it scarcely made a sound, but soon it rang out loudly, and so did every bell in the house. This might have lasted half a minute or a minute, but it seemed an hour. The bells ceased as they had begun together. They were succeeded by a clanking noise deep down below, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain over the casks in the wine merchant's cellar. The cellar door flew open with a booming sound. Then he heard the noise much louder, on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards him.
Ah! It's a humbug! I won't believe it! I know him. Marley's face.
The same face. The very same. Marley in his pigtail, usual waistcoat, tights, and boots. The chain he drew was clasped about his middle.
It was long and wound about him like a tail. It was made up of padlocks, cash boxes, keys, ledgers, and deeds. How now? What do you want with me?
His body.
Much.
Marley's voice, no doubt about it. Who are you?
Ask me who I was.
All right. Who were you then?
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
Can you sit down?
I can't.
Well, do it then.
The ghost sat down on the opposite side of the fireplace, as if he were quite used to it.
You don't believe in me.
I don't.
What evidence of my reality would you have beyond that of your senses?
I don't know.
Why do you doubt your senses?
Because a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You could be a bit of undigested beef, a lot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, A fragment of an underdone potato. Ha! There's more gravy than of the grave about you, whatever you are.
Scrooge was not much in the habit of cracking jokes.
The truth is that he tried to be smart as a means of distracting his attention, keeping down his terror, while the creature's voice chilled the very marrow in his bones. Do you see this toothpick?
I do.
Hey, you're not looking at it.
Yet I see it, notwithstanding.
Oh, humbug, I tell you, this is a humbug! Mercy! Dreadful apparition!
Man of worldly mind, do you believe in me or not?
I do! I must! But why do spirits walk the earth? And why do they come to me?
It is required of all men that the spirit within him should go forth and walk abroad amongst his fellow men and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so in death, doomed to wander and witness what it cannot share, but might have shared on earth and turned to happiness.
You are fettered! Tell me, why?
I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. Of my own free will I girded it, and by my own free will I wear it. Is its pattern strange to you? Or would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? Long and heavy as this one it was 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is a ponderous chain.
Jacob. Old Jacob. Speak comfort to me, Jacob.
I have none to give, nor could I tell you what I would. A very little more is all that is permitted to me. I cannot rest. I cannot linger. I cannot stay anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me, weary journeys lie before me.
7 years dead and traveling all this time?
The whole time, no rest, no peace, incessant torture of remorse.
You travel fast?
On the wings of the wind.
7 years dead? You must have covered a great bit of ground.
Oh, captive bound in double iron. Not to know that no span of regret can make amends for one's life's opportunities misused. Yet such was I. Such was I.
But you were always a good man of business, Jacob.
Business? Mankind was my business. The common good was my business. Mercy, charity, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. Dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. At this time of the year, my spirit suffers most. Why did I walk through crowds of my fellow beings, with my eyes turned down, and I never once would raise them?
Scrooge was very much dismayed to hear the spectre going on at this rate. He began to quake exceedingly.
Hear me, my time grows short.
I will. But don't be hard on me, Jacob. Pray.
I'm here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and a hope of escaping my fate. A chance and a hope of my procuring Ebenezer.
Is this the hope and promise that imagine, Jacob?
It is. You will be haunted by 3 spirits.
I'd rather not.
Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first spirit tonight, when the bell tolls 1. Look for the second spirit on the next night at the same hour, and the third spirit on the following night with the last stroke of 12.
Hey, couldn't I just take them all at once and have it over with, Jacob?
Look to see me no more, and look for your own fate. You remember what has passed between us.
When it had said these words, the apparition walked backwards from him, and at every step it took, the window raised itself a little, so that when the spectre reached it, it was wide open. It beckoned Scrooge to approach, which he did. Marley's ghost held up its hand, warning him to come no nearer. Scrooge stopped, not so much in obedience as in surprise and fear. He became sensible of confused noises in the air, incoherent sounds of lamenting and regret, wailings inexpressibly sorrowful and self-accusatory. The spectre, after listening for a moment, joined in the mournful dirge and floated out the bleak, dark night. From the emotion he had undergone, or the fatigues of the day, or his glimpse of the invisible world, or the dull conversation of the ghost, or the lateness of the hour, much in need of repose, Scrooge went straight to bed without undressing and fell asleep upon the instant.
When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that he could scarcely make out the transparent window from the opaque wall of his chamber. As he endeavored to pierce the darkness with his ferret eyes, he heard the chimes of the neighboring church strike the 4 quarters. So he listened for the answer.
The hour bell sounded with a deep, dull, hollow, melancholy 1.
Light flashed up in the room upon the instant. Scrooge found his bed curtains drawn aside, and he became face to face with the unearthly visitor who drew them.
It was a strange figure, viewed through some supernatural medium, which gave its appearance of having receded from the view. It wore a tunic of the purest white, and round its waist was bound a lustrous belt. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, and, in singular contradiction of that wintry emblem, had its dress trimmed with summer flowers.
But the strangest thing of all was, from the crown of its head sprung a bright, clear jet of light through which all was visible. Are you the messenger whose coming was foretold to me?
I am.
Who or what are you?
Why, I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Long past?
No, your past.
What business has brought you here?
Why, your welfare.
Scrooge expressed himself much obliged, but couldn't help but think that a night of unbroken rest would have been more conducive to that end. The spirit must have heard him thinking, for it answered immediately.
Your reclamation, then. Take heed, rise and walk with me.
Scrooge did as he was told. But as the spirit made its way towards the window, grasped its robe in supplication. I am mortal and liable to fall.
Bear but a touch of my hand, and you shall be upheld in more than this.
As the words were spoken, they passed through the wall and stood upon an open country road with fields on either hand. The city had entirely vanished. Not a vestige of it was to be seen. The darkness and the mist had vanished with it, for it was a clear, cold winter day with snow upon the ground.
Good heavens! I was bred here. I was a boy here.
The spirit gazed upon him mildly. Its gentle touch, that had been light and instantaneous, appeared still present to the old man's sense of feeling.
Your lip is trembling. And what is that upon your cheek?
Scrooge muttered that it was a pimple, and begged the spirit to lead it where it would.
You recollect the way.
Know it? I can walk it blindfold.
Strange to have forgotten it for so many years. Let us go on. They walked along down the path.
Scrooge, recognizing every gate, post, and tree.
Until a little market town appeared in the distance, with its bridge, its church, and its winding river.
Children playing gaily in the fields.
All these children were in great spirits and shouted to each other. The crisp air laughed to hear it.
These are but shadows of the things that have been. They have no consciousness of us.
The travelers came, and as they came, Scrooge knew and recognized every one of them. Why was he rejoiced beyond all bounds to see them? Why did his cold eye glisten and his heart leap up as they went by? Why was he filled with gladness when he heard them give each other
Merry Christmas!
They left on the high road by a well-remembered lane and soon approached a mansion of dull brick. The walls were damp and mossy, the windows broken, their gates decayed.
The school's not quite deserted. A solitary child, neglected by his friends, is left there still.
Yes. I know. I know.
A lonely boy reads by a feeble fire.
Scrooge sat down upon a form and wept to see his former self as he used to be.
What is the matter?
Nothing. Nothing. Just, there was a boy singing Christmas carols at my door the other day. I should have liked to have given him something. That's all.
Let us see another Christmas.
Scrooge's former self grew larger at the words, and the room became a little darker, more dirty.
And there he was, alone again, when all the other boys had gone home for the jolly holidays.
He was not reading now, but walking up and down, despairingly.
Scrooge felt uneasy and glanced anxiously towards the door.
It opened.
And the little girl came dancing in and putting her arms around his neck and awfully kissing him. The pressing man said, "Dear, dear brother, I have come to bring you home, dear brother, to bring you home, home, home."
Home, little fan?
Yes, home, home for good and all, home forever and ever. Father is so much kinder than he used to be, that home's like heaven. He spoke so gently to me one dear night that I was not afraid to ask him if he might come home. He said, "Yes, you should, in order to be a man, and never to come back here again. The first way to spend all Christmas long together and have the merriest time in the world."
You're quite a woman, little fan.
She clapped her hands and laughed and tried to touch his head, but being too little laughed again and stood on him to embrace him. Then began to drag him under in childish eagerness towards the door.
And he accompanied her.
Children bade the schoolmaster goodbye and drove gaily down the garden sweep.
Always a delicate creature, and no rough-minded with him. But she had a large heart.
Yes. So she had.
She died a woman, and had, as I think, children.
Scrooge seemed uneasy in his mind and answered briefly, "Yes."
Although they had but that moment left the school behind them, they were now in the busy thoroughfares of the city. It was made plain enough that here too it was Christmas time again. But it was evening, and the streets were lighted up.
The ghost stopped in front of a certain warehouse store and asked Scrooge if he knew it.
Know it? I was apprenticed here.
They went in. The sight of an old gentleman in a Welsh wig sitting behind such a high desk, if he had been 2 inches taller, he might have knocked his head against the ceiling. Scrooge cried in great excitement,
Why, it's Fezziwig! Bless his heart! Old Fezziwig, alive again!
Old Fezziwig laid down his pen and looked up at the clock, which pointed to the hour of 7. He rubbed his hands, adjusted his capacious waistcoat, laughed all over himself, from his shows to his organ of benevolence, and called out in a comfortable, oily, rich, fat, jovial voice,
Yo-ho there! Dick! Ebenezer!
Scrooge's former self, now grown a young man, came briskly in,
accompanied by his fellow apprentice.
Yo-ho there, Dick. Ebenezer, no more work tonight. Christmas Eve. Christmas. Hilly-ho, let's clear away and make lots of room here. Cheer up, Dick. Hilly-ho, Ebenezer.
Clear away. There was nothing they wouldn't have cleared away or couldn't have cleared away with old Fezziwig looking on. It was done in a minute.
Every movable was packed up. The floors were swept and lined. The lamps were trimmed. Fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse was snug and dry and bright and warm as you would desire to see upon a winter's night.
In came a fiddler with a music book. He went up to the lofty desk and made an orchestra of it.
And tuned like 50 stomach aches.
In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast substantial smile.
In came the three Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable.
In came the young fatherless whose hearts they broke.
In came every young man and woman employed in the business.
In came the housemaid.
With her cousin the baker.
In came the cook.
With her brother's particular friend, the milkman.
And they all came,
one after another.
Some shyly,
Some gracefully. Some pushing.
Some pulling.
and they all came, anyhow and everyhow.
Away they all went.
20 couples at once.
And half round and back again the other way.
Down the middle.
And up again.
Round and round in various stages of affectionate grouping.
Old top couples that were showing up in the wrong place.
New top couples starting off as soon as they got there.
All top couples and not one to help them.
When the result was brought about,
Old Fezziwig, clapping his hands to stop the dance, cried out, "Well done!"
And the fiddler plunged his face into a pot of porter that was there specially for that purpose.
But, scorning rest upon his reappearance, instantly began again.
there were more dances and there were forfeits, and more dances and there was cake, mince pies and plenty of beer. But the great effect of the evening came when the fiddler,
Mindful and awful dog, the sort of man who knew his business better than you or I could have told him it.
struck up Sir Roger de Coverley. With Mrs. Fezziwig.
Top couple too, with a good stiff piece of work cut out for them.
People who were not to be trifled with.
People who would dance, who had no notion of walking.
But there had been twice as many, 4 times, Fezziwig would have been a match for them.
So, Mrs. Fezziwig, as for her, she was fit to be his mate in every sense of the term. And if that's not high praise, you tell me higher, and I shall use it.
If I supply a fitted issue from Fezziwig's cards, they showed us every father dance like mimics.
You could not predict at any given time what would appear the next.
And when old Fezziwig and Miss Fezziwig had gone through all the dance,
dance and retire, both hands to your partner,
Bow and curtsy, corkscrew,
And back again, young mice.
Fezziwig cut deftly and away with his legs and came back upon his feet again without stagger.
and when the clock struck 11, this domestic ball broke up.
Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations, one on either side of the door, and, wishing everyone individually...
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
Said the talented the two princesses, they did the same to them. And thus the cheerful voices had died away, and the lads left to their beds, which were on account of the back shop.
During the whole of this time, Scrooge acted like a man out of his wits, and with his former self corroborated everything, remembered everything, and underwent the strangest agitation.
It was not until now, when the bright faces of his former self and Dick were turned from them, that he remembered the ghost, and became conscious that it was looking full upon him, while the light upon its head burnt very clear.
Small matter to make such silly folks so full of gratitude.
Small?
The ghost signed for him to listen to the two apprentices.
Who were pouring out their hearts in praise of Fezziwig.
He has spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 2 or 3 perhaps. Is it so much that he deserves such praise?
But it isn't that, Spirit. He has the power to make us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. His power lies in words and looks and things so slight and insignificant they cannot be added or counted up. What then? The happiness he gives is it's quite as good as if it cost a fortune.
What is the matter?
Nothing in particular.
Something, I think.
No. No, it's just I should like to say a word or two to my clerk just now. That's all.
My time grows short. Quick!
It produced an immediate effect, for again Scrooge saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of his life. His face had not the harsh and rigid lines of latter years, but it had begun to wear the signs of care.
He was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair young girl in the morning dress.
It matters little. To you, very little. Another idol has displaced me. And if it can cheer and comfort you in time to come, I have just no cause to grieve.
What idol has displaced you?
A golden one. You fear the world too much. I have seen your noble aspirations fall off one by one. Until the master passion gain engrosses you, have I not?
What then? Even if I've grown so much wiser, what then? Am I not changed towards you? Am I?
Our contract is an old one. It was made when we were both poor and content to be so. Until in good season we could improve our worldly fortune by patient industry. You were changed. When it was made, you were another man.
I was a boy.
Your own feeling tells you you are not what you are. I am, which promised happiness when we were one in heart, is fraught with misery now that we are two. How often, how keenly I have thought of this, I will not say. It is enough I have thought of it, that I can release you.
Have I ever sought release?
In words, no, never.
And what then?
In a change in nature, an altered spirit, another atmosphere of life, another hope at its great end. Of anything that's ever made my love any worth of value to you in your sight. If this had never been between us, tell me, would you seek me out and try to win me now? Ah, no.
You think not?
I would gladly think otherwise if I could. Heaven knows when I have learned a truth like this, I know how strong and irresistible it must be. If you were free today, tomorrow, yesterday, even I believe that you would choose a dowerless girl. You, who in your very confidence weigh her by gain. I release you, the full heart of him you once were.
He was about to speak, but with her head turned away from him, she resumed.
You may. The memories of what has passed half makes me hope you will have pain in this. A very, very brief time and you will dismiss the recollection of it gladly as an unprofitable dream, or more that which you awoke. May you be happy in the life you have chosen.
She left him. And I thought,
Spirit, show me no more. Conduct me home. Why do you delight to torture me?
One shadow more.
No more. No more. Do you delight to torture me?
But the relentless ghost pinioned him in both arms and forced him to observe what happened next. They were in another scene, in another place, a room, not very large or handsome, but full of comfort.
Near to the winter fire sat a beautiful young girl, so like the last that Scrooge believed it was the same, until he saw her, now a comely matron.
Sitting opposite her daughter.
Father came home laden with Christmas toys and presents.
The joy, the gratitude, the ecstasy, they're all indescribable alike.
It is enough that by degree the children and their emotions got out of the common.
By one step at a time up to the top of the house.
Where they went to bed and so subsided.
When Scrooge looked on more attentively than ever.
When the father,
Having his daughter lean fondly on him.
sat next to her and her mother at his own fireside.
And when he thought that such a creature so graceful, full of promise, might have called him father. It had been springtime in the haggard winter of his life. His sight grew very dim indeed.
Belle, I saw an old friend of yours today.
Who was it?
Yes.
How can I, Tut? She added in the same breath, laughing as he laughed. Mr. Scrooge?
Mr. Scrooge it was, as I was passing his office and he had not closed it up, and as he had had a candle inside, I could scarcely see his face. His partner lies upon the point of death, I hear. He seemed quite alone, I do believe.
There, no more. I cannot bear it!
I told you, these are shadows of the things that have been. They are what they are, do not blame me.
No, I cannot bear it, I cannot bear it!
He turned upon the ghost, and seeing that it looked upon him with a face, in which some strange way there were fragments of all the faces it had shown him, and he wrestled with it.
Bear it! No more! Haunt me no longer!
He was conscious of being exhausted, and overcome by an irresistible drowsiness, and further, of being in his own bedroom, he gave the cap a parting squeeze, in which his hand relaxed, and he barely time to reel to bed before he sank to a heavy sleep. Waking in the middle of a prodigiously tough snore, and sitting up in bed to get his thoughts together, Scrooge had no occasion to be told that the bell was again upon the stroke of 1. Now, being prepared for almost anything, he was not, by any means, prepared for nothing.
5 minutes, 10 minutes, a quarter of an hour, yet nothing came. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley. Soon, Scrooge began to think that the source of a ghostly light might be in the adjoining room. This idea taking full possession of his mind, he got up and shuffled in his slippers towards the door.
The moment Scrooge's hand was on the lock, a strange voice called him by name and bade him enter. He obeyed.
Come in, and know me better.
Scrooge did so timidly, lowering his head to the ghost.
I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me.
Scrooge did so timidly.
You have never seen the likes of me before?
Never.
The ghost of Christmas present rose.
Good spirit, I went out last night on a compulsion and have learnt a lesson which is working now. Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it.
Touch my robe.
Scrooge did as he was told.
The room and all its contents vanished instantly, and they stood in the streets upon a snowy Christmas morning, where, for the weather was severe, the people made a rough but brisk and not unpleasant kind of music. The sky was gloomy, the shortest streets were choked up with a dingy mist. There was nothing very cheerful in the climate or the town, and yet there was an air of cheerfulness about. clearest summer air and clearest, brightest summer sun might have endeavored to diffuse in vain.
But soon the steeples called good people all to church and chapel, and away they came, flocking through the city streets with their best clothes, their gayest faces emerging from scores of back streets, by lanes and nameless turnings, innumerable people, carrying their dinner to the bakers' shops.
In time, the bells ceased, and the bakers were shut up. And yet there was a genial shadowing forth of all these dinners and the progress of their cooking. In the thawed blotch of wet above each baker's oven, where the pavement smoked as if the stones were cooking too.
And perhaps it was the spirit's pleasure in showing off its power, or else it was its own kind, generous, hearty nature, and its sympathy with all poor men, that led it straight to Scrooge's clerks. For there it went, and took Scrooge with it,
holding its robe,
and stopped to bless Bob Cratchit's dwelling with the sprinkling of its torch.
Then up rose Mrs. Cratchit, Cratchit's wife, dressed out but poorly in a twice-turned gown, but brave in ribbons which are cheap and make a goodly show for sixpence. And she laid the cloth.
Assisted by Belinda Cratchit, second of her daughters, also brave in ribbons, and exalted Master Peter Cratchit to the skies, while he was not proud.
Blew the fire until the slow potatoes bubbling up knocked against the saucepan lid to be let out and peeled.
Whatever has got your precious father, then, and your brother, Tiny Tim? And Martha warned us late last Christmas Day by half an hour.
Here's Martha, Mother.
Here's Martha, Mother. Hooray, there's such a goose, Martha.
Oh, bless your heart alive, my dear, how late you are.
We had a deal of work to finish up last night and I'd clear away this morning, Mother.
Well, never mind, so long as you are come. Sit ye down before the fire, my dear, and have a warm, Lord bless ye.
No, there's Father coming.
Hide, Mother, hide!
Mom himself.
And then came little Bob the father, with at least 3 feet of his comforter, exclusive of the fringe, hanging down before him, and his threadbare clothes all darned up and brushed to look seasonable.
And Tiny Tim up upon his shoulder.
Why, where's our Martha?
Not coming.
Not coming? Not coming upon Christmas Day?
Father!
Well, the young Cratchits hustled Tiny Tim.
And bore him off to the wash place. That you might hear the pudding singing in the copper.
And how did little Tim behave?
Oh, as good as gold, and better. Somehow he gets thoughtful sitting by himself so much. He thinks of the strangest things you ever heard. He told me, coming home, that he hoped the people saw him in the church because he's a cripple. And it might be pleasant for them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see.
His voice was tremulous when he told them this.
He trembled even more when he said that Tiny Tim was growing strong and hearty.
His active little crutch was head upon the floor, and back in Tiny Tim with one other was spoken.
And while Bob, turning up his cuffs, as if, poor fellow, they were capable of being made more shabby, compounded some hot mixture in a jug with gin and lemon, stirred it round and round, and put it on the hob to simmer.
Peter and the 2 ubiquitous young Cratchits
Went to fetch the goose.
which they sing returned in high procession.
Such a bustle ensued that you might have thought the goose the rarest of all birds. There was something quite like it in that house.
Mrs. Cratchit made the gravy hissing hot.
Master Peter mashed the potatoes with incredible vigor.
Miss Melinda scooped up the applesauce. Martha dusted the hot plates.
Bob took Tiny Tim beside him at a tiny corner at the table.
The young Cratchit set chairs for everyone.
At last, the dishes were set on and grace was said.
Amen.
Mrs. Cratchit, looking slowly all along the carving knife, prepared to plunge it in the breast. But when she did,
And the long-expected gush of stuffing issued forth.
One man moved to let raise around the whole board. And even Tiny Tim, up upon the table with the handle of his knife, and feebly cried, "Hurrah!"
There never was such a goose. Its tenderness and flavor and size.
And
cheapness.
Were the themes of universal admiration.
Eked out by applesauce and mashed potatoes, it was a sufficient meal for the whole family, indeed.
Mrs. Cratchit said, surveying one small atom of a bone upon the dish, they hadn't ate it all at last.
Yet everyone had had enough.
The youngest Cratchits in particular were steeped in sage and onions to the eyebrows.
And now the plates were being changed by Miss Belinda.
Mrs. Cratchit left the room alone, too nervous to bear witnesses, to take the pudding up and bring it in.
Suppose it should not be done enough.
Suppose it should break in turning out.
Suppose someone should have gotten over the wall of the backyard and stolen it while they were married with the goose.
All sorts of horrors were supposed.
Hello, a great deal of steam.
The pudding was out of the cupboard.
A smell like washing day, that was the plot.
A soft eating house, and a pastry cooks next door to each other.
With a laundress next door to that.
That was the pudding.
In half a minute, Mrs. Cratchit returned, flushed but smiling proudly with the pudding, like a speckled cannonball, so hard and firm, blazing in half quadrant of ignited brandy and bedight with Christmas holly stuck into the top.
Oh, a wonderful pudding! Bob Cratchit regarded it as the greatest success achieved by Mrs. Cratchit since our marriage.
Mrs. Cratchit said now the weight was off of her, she must confess she had had her doubts about the quantity of flour. At last, the dinner was all done, the cloth cleared, the hearth swept, and the fire made up.
The compound in the jug being tasted and considered perfect. Apples and oranges placed upon the table, and a shovelful of chestnuts on the fire.
Then all the family drew round the hearth.
Bob Cratchit called the circle. At Bob Cratchit's elbow stood the family display of glass. 2 tumblers, and a custard cup without a handle.
These held the hot stuff in the jug, however, as well as a golden goblet would have done.
Bob served it out with beaming looks. Merry Christmas to us all, my dears, and God bless us.
God bless us. God bless us, everyone.
He sat very close to his father's side on his tiny little stool, and Bob held his withered little hand in his, as he loved the child and wished to keep him by his side, dreaded that he might be taken away from him.
Spirit, will Tiny Tim live?
I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die.
No, no, Spirit. Say that Tiny Tim will be spared.
If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, none other of my race will find him here. What then? If he be like to die, he had better do it, and decrease the surplus population.
Mr. Scrooge, I give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast.
The founder of the feast, indeed. I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon and hope he'd have a good appetite for it.
My dear, the children, Christmas Day.
Should be Christmas Day, I'm sure, on which one drinks the health of such an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. You know he is, Robert. You know it better than anyone, poor fellow.
My dear, Christmas Day.
I'll drink his health, for your sake. And the day's, not for his. Thank you. A long life to him, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. He'll be very merry and very happy, I have no doubt.
The children drank the toast after her.
It was the first of the proceedings which had no heartiness.
Tiny Tim drank at last of all, but he didn't catch tuppence for it.
Scrooge was the ogre of the family. The mention of his name cast a dark shadow on the party.
Which was not dispelled for full 5 minutes.
After he had passed away, they were 10 times merrier than before, for the mere relief of Scrooge, the baleful being done with.
Bob told him how he had a situation in his eye for Master Peter, which would bring in, if obtained, a full 5 and 6 pence weekly.
The 3 younger Cratchits laughed tremulously at the
idea of Peter's being a man of business.
Now which Peter looks thoughtfully at the fire, as if deliberating what particular investment they would receive of that bewildering income.
Martha, who was a poor worker at the milliner's, then told them what kind of work she had to do, and how many hours she worked at a stretch, and how she meant to lie in bed tomorrow being a holiday she passed at home. Also, had she seen the Countess and a lord a few days before, and how the lord was just about as tall as Peter.
At which Peter pulled up his collar so high that you couldn't have seen his head if you had been there.
All this time, the chestnuts in the jug went round and round.
And boys, they had a song about a lost child traveling in the snow from Tiny Tim, who had a plenty little voice and sang it very well indeed.
There was nothing of high mark in this. They were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproof. Their clothes were scanty. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time.
And as they faded, and looked happier yet in the bright sprinklings of the spirit's torch parting, Scrooge kept his eye on them all, and especially on Tiny Tim, until the last.
It was getting dark and snowing pretty heavily, and as Scrooge and the spirit went along the streets, the brightness of the roaring fires and kitchens, parlors, and all sorts of rooms was wonderful. But if you had judged from the number of people on their way to friendly gatherings, you might have thought that no one was at home to give them a welcome when they got there. But instead of every house expecting company and piling up its fires half a chimney high.
Blessings on it, how the ghost exulted.
Without a word of warning from the ghost, they stood upon a bleak and desert moor where monstrous masses of rude stone were cast about as though it were the burial place of giants. What place is this?
The place where miners live. Labor in the bowels of the earth. But they know me. See?
An old man in a voice that seldom rose above the howling of the wind upon the barren waste was singing a Christmas song. It had been a very old song when he was a boy.
The spirit did not tarry here, but bade Scrooge hold its road, and passing on above the moor, sped with it.
It was a great surprise to Scrooge, while listening to the moaning of the wind, thinking what a solemn thing it was to move over the lonely darkness over an unknown abyss. Whose depths were secret as profound as death. It was a great surprise to Scrooge to hear a hearty laugh. It was an even greater surprise to recognize that laugh as that of his own nephew.
But the spirit standing, smiling by his side, looking at that same nephew with approving affability.
If you should happen, by any unlikely chance, to know a man more blessed in a laugh than Scrooge's nephew, all I can say is, I should like to know him too. Introduce me to him, and I'll cultivate his acquaintance.
It is a fair, even-handed, noble adjustment of things that while there is infection and disease and sorrow, there is nothing in the world so irresistibly contagious as laughter and good humor.
When Scrooge's nephew laughed in this way, holding his sides, rolling his head, and twisting his face with the most extravagant contortions.
Scrooge's niece laughed as heartily as he.
And their assembled friends, being not a bit behindhand, roared out lustily.
He said that Christmas was a humbug. As I live, he believed it too.
More shame for him, Fred.
Oh, he's a comical old fellow, that's the truth. And not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offences carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him.
I'm sure he is very rich, Fred. At least you always tell me so.
What of that, my dear? His wealth is of no use to him. He don't do any good with it. He don't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the satisfaction of thinking that he is going to benefit us with it.
I have no patience with him.
Scrooge's niece's sister, along with all the other women, expressed the same opinion.
Oh, I have. I'm sorry for him. I couldn't be mad at him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself, always. And he takes it into his head to dislike us and not come and dine with us. What's the consequence? You don't lose much on a dinner.
Indeed, I think you lose very good dinner.
Everybody else said the same.
And there must have been allowed to have been competent judges.
Because they had just had dinner and, with dessert upon the table, were clustered round the fire by lamplight.
I'm glad to hear of it, for I haven't had great faith in these young housekeepers. Well, what do you say, Topper?
Topper clearly had his eye on Scrooge's niece's sister, for he replied that a bachelor is a wretched outcast who has no right to express an opinion on the subject.
Whereat Scrooge's niece's sister, the plump one with the lace tucker, not the one with the roses, blushed.
Scrooge's nephew revelled in another laugh, and as it was impossible to keep the infection off, though the plump sister tried hard to do it with aromatic vinegar, his example was unanimously followed. The consequence of his taking a dislike to us and not making merry with us is, as I think, he loses some pleasant moments, which could do him no harm. I'm sure he finds pleasanter companions than he can find in his own thoughts, or his dusty chambers, or his mouldy old office. I mean, they give him the same chance every year, whether he likes it or not. I pity him. He may reign at Christmas till he dies, but he can't help thinking better of it. I defy him. If he finds me going there year after year in good temper, and to think I shook him yesterday.
That don't laugh notion of his shaking Scrooge. After tea, they had some music, for they're a musical family and knew what they were about when they sung a glee or catch.
Especially Topper, who could growl away in the bass like a good one and never swell large veins in his forehead or get red in the face over it.
Scrooge's niece played well upon the harp and played other tunes as simple as little air.
But they didn't devote the whole evening to music.
After a while, they played it forwards. Oh, it is good to be children, and never better than at Christmas.
There was first a game of blind man's buff.
And I know who'll believe Topper was really blind that he has eyes in his boots.
The way he went after that plump sister in the lace tucker.
Just an outrage on the prejudice.
Knocking over the fire iron.
Tumbling over the chairs.
Bumping against the
Holding
piano.
himself among the curtains.
Wherever she went, there went he.
He always knew where that plump sister was.
He wouldn't catch anybody else.
And she had bumped against him on purpose.
He made a feint of endeavoring to seize you, which would have been a frontier understanding, for he was instantly slammed off in the direction that
She often cried out that it wasn't fair,
And it really was not.
But at last when he caught her,
when in spite of all of the silken rustlings and rapid flutterings, he
got in a corner whence there was no escape.
But his conduct was most acceptable.
For his pretending not to know her.
For his pretending it was necessary to touch her headdress.
and to further assure himself of her identity by pushing a certain ring upon her finger.
And a certain chain about her neck.
Was vile, monstrous.
And it really was when they were so confidential behind the curtains.
Scrooge's niece was not on the blind man's buff, but she joined in the forfeits and loved to admiration with all the letters of the alphabet.
Likewise, in the game of how, when, and where, she was very great. And to the secret joy of Scrooge's nephew, of each of sisters Harlow.
There must have been 20 people there, young and old, but they all played.
And so did Scrooge, for wholly forgetting his interest here, that his sound made no voice in their ears. He oftentimes guessed quite loud, and oftentimes quite right too.
The spirit was greatly pleased to find him in this mood and looked upon him with such favor.
And he begged like a boy to be able to stay until the guests departed.
But this the spirit said could not be done.
But this is a new game, Spirited. One half hour. Just one.
What's the game?
Yes and no.
Yes and no, how will we play that?
I have something in mind, and you ask me questions that can be answered by either yes or no.
Is it a vegetable?
No.
Is it a mineral?
No.
Oh, could it be an animal?
Yes.
Is it alive?
Oh, yes.
Is it a dangerous animal?
No.
Is it a disagreeable animal?
Yes, very disagreeable.
Is it savage?
Yes.
Does it grunt?
Yes, most of the time.
Does it live in a menagerie?
No.
Does it live in London?
Yes.
Would I meet it in the street?
Yes.
Does it perform like a trained monkey?
No.
Is it butchered in a market?
No.
Or could it be a horse?
No.
An ass?
No.
A cow?
No.
A bull?
No.
A tiger? A dog?
A pig?
A cat?
No.
A bat?
No.
Oh, I know what it is. I figured out what it is.
What is it?
Your Uncle Scrooge.
Wait! But I asked if it were a bat.
Oh, he's given us plenty of merriment, I am sure, and it'll be ungrateful not to drink his health. Here is a glass of mood wine ready at the moment, and I say Uncle Scrooge.
Uncle Scrooge!
A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to the old man, whatever he is. He wouldn't take it from me, but may he have it nevertheless. Uncle Scrooge.
Uncle Scrooge!
The whole scene passed off in the breath of the last words spoken by his nephew, and he and the spirit were again upon their travels. Much they saw, and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. The spirit stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful. By struggling men, and they were patient in a greater hope. By poverty, and it was rich. The Spirit left its blessing and taught Scrooge his precepts.
Spirit, forgive me if I'm not justified in what I ask, but I see something strange and not belonging to you protruding from your skirts. Is that a foot or a claw?
It might be a claw, for the flesh there is upon it, was the spirit's sorrowful reply. Look here!
From the foldings of its robe, it brought two children, wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, miserable. They knelt down at its feet and clung upon the outside of its garment.
Spirit, are they yours?
They are man's, and they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. The boy is ignorance, and the girl is want. Beware them both in all their degree, but most of all, beware this boy. For on his brow I see that which is written, Doom.
Spirit, have they no resources, no refuge?
Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?
Scrooge looked about him for the ghost, but saw it not. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, the benediction of old Jacob Marley, lifting his head, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, and coming at him like a mist along the ground.
The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came, Scrooge bent down upon his knee. For in the very air through which this spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery.
Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come? And you are to show me the shadows of the things that have not been but will be in the time before us. Is that correct, Spirit? Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any spirit I have yet seen, because I know your purpose is to do me good, and that I wish to live to be another man from what I was. I am prepared to bear your company, and do so with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? Lead on, Spirit, for the night is waning, and it is precious time to me. Lead on.
They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to spring up about them. The spirit stopped beside two young people. Observing that the hand was pointed to them, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk.
No, I don't know much about it. All I know is he's dead.
When did he die?
Last night, I believe.
What happened? What was wrong with him? I thought he would never die.
God knows.
What did he do with all his money?
I don't know, probably left it to his company. All I know is he hasn't left any to me. It's likely to be a very cheap funeral, for I would know anyone alive who would go to it.
I wouldn't mind going if the lunch is provided, but I must be fed, if I were to make one.
Speakers and listeners strolled away and joined other groups. Scrooge recognized them and looked to the spirit for an explanation.
The phantom glided on into the street. Its finger pointed to persons meeting. Scrooge listened again, thinking that the explanation might lie here. Scrooge and the phantom came into the presence of a man, just as a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop.
Look here, old Joe. Here's a chance. Let the tall woman alone to be the first, cried she who entered first.
Let the laundress be the second.
And let the Undertaker's apprentice be the third. We haven't all met it without meaning it.
Come in. Come into the parlor. What have you got to sell? What have you got to sell?
Have nice patience, Joe. You'll see.
The woman who had already spoken threw a bundle on the floor and sat on a stool in a flaunting manner, crossing her elbows over her knees and looking with bold defiance on the other two. What odds then? What odds, Mrs. Dilber? Every person got a right to take care of themselves. He always did.
That's true indeed. No man more so.
Why then don't stand staring as if you was afraid, woman? Who's the wiser? We're not about to poke holes in each other's coats, I suppose.
No, indeed. Shall hope not.
Very well then. That's enough. Who's the worse for the loss of a few things such as these? Not a dead man, I suppose.
I mean, if you wanted to keep him after he was dead, wicked old Screw, then why wasn't he as natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he would have had somebody to look after him after he was dead instead of lying there alone, gasping for air all by himself.
It's the truest word that ever was spoke. It's a judgment on him. I wish it was a little heavier judgment than it should have been. You can depend upon it. I could lay my hands on anything else.
Open this bundle, Joe, and let me know the value of it. Speak out plain. I'm not afraid to be the first, nor afraid for them to see it. We all know pretty well we were helping ourselves before we met here, I believe. It's no sin. Open the bundle, Joe.
Old Joe severely examined and appraised the goods and chalked up the sum he was disposed to give for each. This is your account. I wouldn't pay a sixpence more. Who's next?
Mrs. Dilber was next. Sheets and towels, a little wearing of apparel, 2 old-fashioned silver teaspoons, a pair of sugar tongs, and a few boots.
Her account was tallied in the same manner. I always give too much to the ladies. That's my weakness. It will ruin me. This is your account. And if you ask for another sixpence and made it an open question, I'd knock off a half a crown and not repent.
And now undo my bundle, Joe.
Old Joe got on his knees for the greater good of unfastening a great many knots. He pulled out a dark roll of black stuff. What's this, bed curtains?
Ah, bed curtains.
You don't mean to say you took them down, rings and all, while he was lying there dead, do you?
Yes, I do. Why not?
You were born to make your fortune, and you certainly will do it.
I certainly shan't hold my hand when I can get anything in it by reaching it out for a man such as he was. I promise you, Joe. Don't spill that oil on the blankets now.
These blankets?
Whose else's do you think? He's not likely to take cold without him, I dare say.
Well, I hope he didn't die of anything catching.
And don't you be afraid of that. I wasn't so fond of his company I'd loiter about him for such things if he did. Ah, you can look at that shirt till your eyes ache. You won't find a hole in it nor a threadbare place. It was the best he had and a fine one too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me.
What do you call wasting of it?
Why, putting it on him to be buried in, to be sure. Somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again.
Scrooge listened to this dialogue in horror as the group sat about, whose scanty light had fallen by the old man's lamp. He looked at them with detestation and disgust.
This is the end, you see? He frightened everybody away from him when he was alive to profit when he was dead.
Spirit, I see. I see. The case of this unhappy man might have been my own. My life tends that way now. Merciful heaven, what is this?
He recoiled in terror. The scene had changed. Now he almost touched a bed. A bare, uncurtained bed, on which beneath a ragged sheet there was the body of this plundered, unknown man. Scrooge glanced towards the phantom. Its steady hand was pointed to the head. The cover was so carelessly adjusted, the slightest motion of a finger upon Scrooge's part would have disclosed the face.
He thought about it, felt how easy it would be to do it, and longed to do it. But he had no more power to withdraw the veil than he did to dismiss the spectre at his side. Spirit, this is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lessons. Trust me. Let us go. I understand you, Spirit, but I don't have the power. I don't have the power, Spirit. Is there anyone who feels any emotion caused by the death of that man? Spirit, show that person to me, I beseech you.
The phantom spread its dark robe before him for a moment, like a wing, and withdrawing it, revealed a room by daylight, where a young woman was.
She was expecting someone, and with an anxious eagerness, she walked up and down the room and started at every sound.
At length, the long-expected knock was heard. She hurried to the door and met her husband, a man whose face was careworn and depressed, though he was young. He sat down to the dinner that had been boiling for him by the fire, and when she asked him faintly what news, he appeared embarrassed how to answer.
Is it good or bad?
It's bad.
We are quite ruined.
No, there's hope yet.
If he relents, there is. Nothing's passed up if such a miracle has happened.
He is far past relenting. He's dead.
Oh, thank heaven! Forgive me. Forgive me for saying such a thing.
I went to see him to beg for a week's delay. His charwoman told me he had taken ill. Not only was he ill, he was dying.
To whom will our debt be transferred?
I don't know. But before that time, Caroline, we will have the money. And even though we did not bad fortune to find so merciless a creditor, his successor, we can sleep with light hearts tonight, Caroline.
Spirit, is there anyone who will show me some tenderness connected with the death of that dark chamber which we just left now? Will be forever present to me.
The ghost conducted him through several streets, familiar to his feet.
Scrooge looked about to see himself, but nowhere was he to be seen.
They entered poor Bob Cratchit's house, the dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and children seated round the fire. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues in one corner.
And sat looking up at Peter, who had a book before them and read to them.
The mother and her daughters were engaged in sewing, but surely they were very quiet.
And he took a child and set it in the midst of them.
The color hurts my eyes. They're better now again. It makes them weak by candlelight. I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home for the world. It must be near his time.
Past it, rather. I've seen him to walk a little bit slower these past few evenings, Mother.
And they were silent again.
Last she said, in a steady, clear voice that only faltered once.
I have known him walk with... I
I haven't known him walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder very fast indeed.
And so have I, often.
And so have I.
But he was very light to carry, and your father loved him so that it was no trouble. No trouble. There's your father at the door.
And Bob, his comforter, he had need of it. Poor fellow. Came in. His tea was ready for him on the hob.
And the youngest Cratchit's going to come in. Stay behind it, Father. Don't be grieved.
He was very cheerful with them and spoke pleasantly to all the family. Saw the work upon the table and praised the industry and speed of Mrs. Cratchit and the girls. It'd be done long before Sunday, he said.
Sunday? You went today then, Robert?
Yes, my dear. I wish you could have gone. It would have done good to see how green a place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him that I would walk there on a Sunday. My little child. My little child.
They drew about the hearth and talked, the mother and the girls working still.
Bob told them of the extraordinary kindness of Mr. Scrooge's nephew, whom he had scarcely seen but once, and seen him in the street that day, and seen that I looked a little down, you know. He inquired what happened to distress me, on which he's the most pleasantest spoken gentleman you ever heard. I told him, heartily sorry for it, Mr. Cratchit, he said. I'm heartily sorry for your good wife. By the by, how he ever knew that, I don't know.
Knew what, my dear?
Why, that you're a good wife.
Everybody knows that.
Very well observed, my boy. I hope they do. Heartily sorry, he said, for your good wife. If I can be of service to you in any way, he told me, handing me his card, that's where I live. Pray come to me. Now, it wasn't for the sake of anything he might be able to do for us, so much as for his kind way that this was quite delightful. It really seemed as if he'd known our tiny Tim and felt with us.
I'm sure he's a good soul.
You'd be sure of it, my dear, if you saw and spoke to him. I wouldn't be at all surprised if you got here about his situation.
Only hear that, Peter.
It's just as likely as not. One of these days. Though, there's plenty of time for that, my dear. But, however, and whenever we part from one another, I'm sure we shall none of us forget poor tiny Tim, shall we? Or this first parting that there was amongst us. And I know, my dears, that when we recollect how patient and how mild he was, though he was a little child, we shall not quarrel easily amongst ourselves and forget poor tiny Tim in doing it. I'm very happy. I'm very happy.
Spirit, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me, what was that man we saw lying dead?
The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him to a dismal, wretched churchyard. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one.
Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of the things that will be? Or are they the shadows of the things that may be only? Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends to which if persevered in they must live. But if the courses be altered, the ends may change too. Say it is thus with what you show me. Scrooge crept nearer to the stone, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name.
Ebenezer Scrooge.
Am I that man who lies dead? No. No, Spirit. Hear me! I am not the man I was! I will not be the man I must have been but for this intercourse. Why, show me this if I am beyond all hope. Please, Spirit, tell me that I may alter these shadows by a changed life. I will honor Christmas in my heart and keep it all the year. The past, the present, the future, the spirit of all three shall strive within me. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on that stone.
Holding up his hands in a last prayer, have his fate reversed. He saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost.
Yes, on the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. And best and happiest of all the time before him was his own, to make amends in. Jacob Marley, heaven and Christmas be praised. I say this on my knees, Jacob, on my knees. I don't know what to do. I'm as light as a feather. I'm as happy as an angel. I'm as merry as a schoolboy. I'm as giddy as a drunken man. There's the window by which the ghost of the Christmas present sat. There is the door by which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered. Here's the window where I saw the wandering spirit. It's all right. It's all true. It all happened. I don't even know what day it is. I don't know how long I've been amongst the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. I don't care. I'd rather be a baby.
He was checked in his transports by the churches, ringing out the lustiest peals he'd ever heard. And running to the window, he opened it and put out his head.
No fog, no mist, clear, bright, jovial, stunning, gold. Gold piping for the blood to dance to. Oh, golden sunlight, heavenly skies, sweet air, merry bells. Oh, glorious, glorious. Well, hello there! Cried Scrooge downwards to a boy in Sunday clothes who perhaps had loitered about to look in on him. Well, hello!
Hello?
Do you know what day it is?
Today? Why, Christmas Day!
It's Christmas Day! I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. But of course they can! They can do anything! Hello, my fine fellow!
Hello?
Do you know the poulterers on the block one up?
I know I did.
Do you know if they've sold the prize turkey or not? Not the little one now, no, the big one!
Well, the one as big as me?
Oh, what a remarkable boy, what a delightful boy! Oh, yes, my buck!
It's hanging there now.
It is, it is. Well, go and buy it.
Go on.
No, I am in earnest. Go and bring the man here that I may give him directions on where to take it. Bring the man and I'll give you a shilling. Bring the man in 5 minutes and I'll give you half a crown.
The boy was off like a shot.
I shall send it to Bob Cratchit's house. He won't know who sent it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim.
The hand in which he wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did, somehow, and went downstairs to open the street door.
Merry Christmas! Hello, my boy.
It was a turkey. He never could have stood upon its legs, that bird. He would have snapped them short off in a minute, like sticks of sealing wax.
Well, you can't possibly carry that all the way to Camden Town. You must have a cab. Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas!
The chuckle with which he said this, and the chuckle with which he had paid for that turkey, and the chuckle with which he had paid for the cab, and the chuckle with which he had recompensed the boy, were only to be exceeded by the chuckle with which he sat down breathless in his chair again, and chuckled till he cried.
Merry Christmas! He put on his Sunday best. Put on his best shoes. His favorite hat. And his best trousers, and made his way outside.
People were by this time pouring forth, as he had seen them with the ghost of Christmas present, and walking with his hands behind him.
And then a good-humored fellow approached him and said, "Good morning, sir. A Merry Christmas to you."
And of all the blithe sounds in his ears, those are the blithest of all.
He had not gone far, and coming on towards him, he held 2 ladies who had walked into his counting house the day before, and said, Scrooge and Marley's, I believe.
Good morning, madams. I hope you were successful yesterday. It was very kind of you.
Mr. Scrooge?
Yes, that is my name, and I fear it might not be pleasant to you. Therefore, I should like to beg your pardon and give you a...
Oh, my dear Lord. Mr. Scrooge, are you serious?
Yes, and not a shilling less. A great many back payments are included in that. I assure you. You will do me that favor, won't you?
My dear sir, I don't know what to say to such munificence.
Say nothing. Don't say anything. Come and see me. Come and see me. You will come and see me, won't you?
We will.
Bless you. Bless you. 50 times bless you.
He went to church, and he walked about the streets, and he watched the people hurrying to and fro, and he patted children on the head and questioned beggars. He looked down into the kitchens of houses and up to the windows and found that everything could yield him pleasure. He had never dreamed that any walk, that anything, could give him so much happiness. In the afternoon, he turned his steps towards a house he had seen just the night before, his nephew's house.
Bless my soul, who's that?
Fred, it is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner, Fred. Will you have me?
My dear Uncle, come in, come in.
Oh, my dear, will you ever forgive a very foolish and silly old man?
Oh dear, Uncle.
Scrooge's niece looked just the same.
So did Pop when he came.
So did Pop's sister when she came. So did everyone when they came.
Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness.
As the party ended, Scrooge, well, he was sneaking off. Yes, sneaking off to his own office. It was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. He'd only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. Well, that was the thing that he had set his heart upon.
And he did it. Yes, he did. 5 minutes after, no Bob. 10 minutes after, no Bob. It was a full 18 minutes and a half past his time. Scrooge kept the door open so he could see Bob come into the tank.
His hat was off before he opened the door. His comforter, too. He was on his stool in a jiffy and driving away with his pin as if trying to overtake 9 o'clock.
Well, hello, sir. What do you mean by coming into the office at this time of day?
I'm very sorry, sir. I'm behind my time.
Yes, you are. I should say you are. Step this way, my fine fellow.
I'm very sorry, sir. It's only once a year. It should not be repeated. I was making quite merry yesterday.
Yes, well, let me tell you something, my friend. I shall not stand for this any longer. And therefore, I shall raise your salary. A Merry Christmas, Bob. A Merry Christmas that I have given you a million. I shall raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family. We will discuss your situation this very day over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop. Bob, make up the fire and grab another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit.
Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, he did not die. He was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him.
But he let them laugh, and little heeded them.
His own heart laughed, but that was quite enough for him.
Really? For a man who was so out of practice, it was a wonderful laugh. A most illustrious laugh. The father of a long line of brilliant laughs.
He had no dealings with spirits, whatever afterwards.
It was said of him that he was a man who knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed that knowledge. Let that be said of us, and all of us.
And so, as Tiny Tim observed,